Hello and welcome to my channel. This tutorial is on the making of this smoky three-layered ruffled collar dress that has been trending for a while, that is absolutely beginner friendly and very lovely. I believe this is something you would love to watch to the end. Let's get right into the cotton table proper. So here on my cutting table, I have these two pieces of fabric unfold and cut out already for the front and the back piece of my top. And then the width of this is dependent on you, but for me, the wideness of this is my hip measurement divided by 4 plus at least 5 inches of allowance. I have about 5.5 inches of allowance here, and this top mark here serves as my chest line and all the way to my half length, which is 17 inches, but I want this lower than my half length, so I'm coming down all the way to 20 inches, and then I have 1 inch for stitching allowance at the bottom. So the measurements are just dependent on how low or how high you want the smoky effect of the top part of the dress to be. So here I'm just trying to make sure that I have my accurate measurements, at the top and at the bottom and at both sides of my fabric. So this is the wrong side of my fabric. I'm going to be making all my markings on the right side of my fabric. So if you are new to smoking, then I advise that yes, you do not skip this step, which is making visible your marks on your fabric before you take it to the sewing machine to run your smoke stitch. However, if you're very familiar with smoking, you can totally ignore this step and just eyeball it and then take it to your sewing machine and run your smoke stitch over it. So here I'm making half of an inch markings on my fabric. So this is 1 inch folding allowance at the top and then half of an inch all the way around. So I'm done making my markings on the right side, and then this is what it looks like. I have this for the front. Just take it to your sewing machine, fold it at the top here, and then run a stitch. I'll be doing that for both pieces of my top. But then before we proceed to the sewing machine, I'm going to be showing you how I prepare my smoke thread. So I have this soaked in water for 5 minutes to 1 hour before I actually make use of this. And this helps with reducing noise when you're sewing or cutting of the thread. So I just have my briller here, and I'm going to reel this thread around my bobbin, okay, as lightly as I can, as loosely as I can. Don't make it so tight, and make sure you don't stretch it, and make sure that it is not too full by the time you're done. So after this, we go right into our machine. So here I am now on my sewing machine, and I have my actual threads at the top and at the bottom because I want to finish up the top part of this outfit properly. So I'm going to run straight stitch here, folding half of an inch twice at the top. You can actually weave the top part of your dress. It all depends on the look you want to achieve, but for me, I'm running a straight stitch on the top part of my dress. And if you're new to my channel or a returning subscriber, thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Thank you. So now I'm done with the first part of this. Now I have my second piece here. So folding half of an inch twice onto the wrong side of the fabric, and then just run your straight stitch all the way. And please don't forget that we're running this straight stitch with our normal thread at the top and at the bottom of our machine. So I'll just proceed to running this stitch now. So I'm done running the stitch. I'm just trying to cut off all the loose threads here, and then I will proceed to taking out the my shuttle, okay, from my machine. And this is because I want to change the threads right now from my normal thread to my smoky thread. I've taken out the normal thread now. I've taken out the normal thread, and then this is my smoky thread. I'm just going to put it in here, and then as you can see, it's not going in smoothly. So with the help of a screwdriver, I'm just going to release the tension here, and then it will pass in freely. But then you don't want it too free and you don't want it too tight. So just adjust the tension until you get, you know, a free flow that you can work with. And so at this point, this is what I need, and I'm just going to put it back in, and then I'll pick it up from my underneath my sewing machine, and then I can proceed to smoking the top part of our dress. So I'm running my first stitch now, and as if you notice, I'm running it half of an inch away before the start of my fabric there, and I'm not dragging my fabric. I'm just allowing the sewing machine pick my fabric as easy, as it can, as freely as it can. I'm doing absolutely nothing here. So try not to stretch your fabric. And then to avoid so many pause and stops and cuts when you get to the end of your fabric, okay, just keep running your stitch this way, and when you get to the end like this, instead of cutting, just lift your foot or turn it over to the other side, and then bring your foot down, and then you continue stitching, and you do this all the way until you get to the end of the fabric. And I'm smoking these half of an inch apart of each other. However, I noticed that at the point I didn't like the smoke effect of the half of an inch apart. I felt like I wanted it, the smoke effect to be closer together. So after a while, I decided to move it to a quarter of an inch apart. As you can see, the smoking effect is going, as should be, but then I switched up to a quarter of an inch apart, which is what it is, which is what you're seeing right now. So you can see the smoke effect is closer together, and then you do this all the way to the end. And at the end of the day, this is what it should look like for both pieces. As you can see, the effect is really beautiful. And now we'll proceed to working on to our lining, and then this is the measurement I use in cutting out my lining. This is just a long piece of fabric for my lining. There are no joinings whatsoever. So just take out the top part of your dress. For me, that's 20 inches. And then the full length of my dress is 39 inches. However, this lining is 4 inches shorter than the full length of my dress. And then I added 1.5 inches for allowance at the top and at the bottom. So the first marking here is where the second line mark is where my first layer is going to start from. From that point, I'm going to be coming down 4 inches, and this is where the second layer of my dress will start from. And then I'm just going to, yeah, extend the line there. From this mark, I'm coming down 7 inches, and that's where the third layer of my dress is going to start from as well. Behind the scene, I will just extend this line to the full length of my lining. I'll extend this line to the full length of my lining. I'll open it up and I'll draw the lines all around my lining. So I have cut out 3 pieces of fabric for my for the layers. The first step is 6 inches, 8 inches, and 10 inches, and this includes bending and stitching allowance to my lining. So here I have 6 pieces of this cut out for the first step. Actually, this is the sixth piece. For the second layer, I have 5 pieces, and then for the third layer I have 5 pieces, and this is the full length of the 45 inches Ankara fabric. So picking up this piece, I'm going to attach them right sides facing each other, and then run a stitch holding them together like this so that I have one long piece. I'll do that for all the layers individually. And after stitching for the first layer, this is what I have, one long piece. I also went ahead to fold the hem, and I also advise that you weave the parts you'll be attaching to your lining piece. So working on our lining straight up, I'm just going to attach put have my Ankara fabric on my lining this way and create gathers and run it to the full length of the fabric of the lining. And then for my second layer, I'm going to be coming up half of an inch from this white chalk mark that I made, and that's where I'll attach my second layer. I'll do the same for the third layer. I'll come up half of an inch and then I'll attach my gathered on it. And then for the top part of our dress, this is what it looks like. I'll place them right sides facing each other. I'll take it to the sewing machine and hold it down using the allowance I left on both sides. And after attaching our gathered pieces to our lining, this is what it looks like. This is the first step, the second step, and the third step. So for the first step, I have it attached, normal as you would on your fabric. Opening this up, the second step, as you can see, you can't see the rough edge, is I attached it like on opposite side and flipped it over, so it's neater this way. And I also did the same thing for the third step, and also I weaved these layers before I attached them to my lining pieces. So this is just an overview of what it looks like. So the next thing is I'm going to get both open ends right sides facing each other. I'll take it to my sewing machine and then I will run a stitch holding both sides together, because I want this to end up being just one round piece with no side opening. Then I'm done joining the top part of my dress. As you can see, you can also proceed to weaving this right away. I think here I have. And then I'm going to fold this way, making sure that the side seams are together. And this is because I'm trying to get the center front and the center back. So I'll notch this here. I already have a center front and the center back. I'm also going to outline it so that it's visible. And I'm doing this because I also want to get the center front and center back for our bottom piece. So bringing on the skirt part of our dress, I've sewn the side, so we have one full piece here. So I'm also going to notch this part, which will serve as my side seam. And then I'm going to bring the both of them together, side seam, and this is because I also want to notch towards my right, which is what I'm doing here, and I'm also going to notch towards my left. Now after notching the bottom part of my dress, I'm going to get the top part of my dress, and then with the use of a pin I will attach the top part of my dress to the bottom part of my dress, and then I will run a stitch round them, okay, so that it becomes one piece. Just make sure that the notch part aligns. And after stitching, this is what it looks like. As you can see, it's taken shape already. You can actually wear it like this, okay, without the neckline ruffle. However, I'm going to be adding a ruffle for my neckline, so that's what we're going to be doing right now. Just measure from one side of your chest line, above your chest line, all behind your neck, and then to the other side of your chest line. So what I have was 22 inches. I multiplied that by 2, and I'm just making use of my full length of 45 inches, and the wideness of this is 12 inches. On fold is 6 inches. I'll take this to my sewing machine, right sides facing each other, and run a stitch, and then I'll flip it over to the right side. Having flipped this over to the right side, I give this a very good press, making sure that the side that has the seam is facing me. And then you'll be needing a 1-inch elastic band for this project. And then the measurement I got from one end of my shoulder over my neck to the other end of my shoulder is 22 inches. I'm going to be taking out 5 inches from that measurement, and then I will cut my elastic on 17 inches. So the length of my elastic is 17 inches. Now I'm going to put my elastic through the one end of the opening on my collar this way, and then I'll use a pin to hold this down so that it doesn't move. And then I'm also going to try to get the other end of the elastic through the other opening on my collar. or my Ankara fabric, and just make sure that your elastic is not bent, is not folded. So I'll take this to my sewing machine and just try to run a stitch, making sure that it's as straight as possible. You don't have to pin this side, you're not going to have to pin it. I'm just for reference, I'm showing you what we're going to do. Okay, so you remove the pin on the other end, take it to your sewing machine. So you keep running a stitch and creating gathers with your hand this way, okay, until you exhaust the elastic inside the Ankara fabric for your collar. And then after running the stitch, this is what it looks like. As you can see, it's really very stretchy and can go over your neckline at the back. So now bringing in our dress, we're going to be attaching our neckline now. From one side seam, stretch out your fabric and measure out 2 inches, which is what I have. From the other side seam, stretch out your fabric, measuring 2 inches inwards and make a marking, which is what I have. And then I will get my collar now. Make sure the side that has the seam, the sewn edge is inside, and then this one outside is doesn't have a seam. It's very, the finishing is neat. Place it this way, okay, and then attach it to your fabric, to your dress this way. With the help of a pin, you can just hold this down and then you run a stitch holding it. Please make sure that when you're running the stitch, okay, you're actually stretching the smoky part of your fabric whilst you're attaching the smoky part of your fabric to your collar, okay. But then before you attach, you also want to make sure you finish up these selvage areas so that it's neat. And we've come to the end of the tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Till my next video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Bye.